The cafeteria was buzzing with laughter and chatter, trays clattering, and students jostling in line for their lunches. It was a typical midday scene, until a sudden, unexpected act shattered the normal rhythm. A rich boy, dressed in designer clothes, strutted toward the lunch tables with the arrogance of someone who believed rules didn't apply to him. His mother followed behind, laughing and chatting as though she owned the room. Students noticed him immediately. He had that unmistakable aura of entitlement. Without warning, the boy grabbed a plate of food and hurled it across the cafeteria. Time seemed to slow for a moment as mashed potatoes, gravy, and a few stray fries flew through the air, landing near Keanu Reeves, who was quietly eating his lunch. The splatter hit the floor with a wet smack, and a few fries even brushed past Keanu's shoes. Gasps rippled through the cafeteria. Students froze mid-bite. Phones hovered midair, some capturing the shocking scene. Others whispered to their friends, "Did he just throw food at Keanu Reeves?" The boy's mother laughed loudly, a cruel, high-pitched sound that echoed through the room. "Oh, isn't that funny?" she said, pointing at her son with pride. Students at nearby tables snickered nervously, unsure whether to laugh along or recoil in shock. Keanu Reeves didn't flinch. He didn't wipe the food off. He didn't shout. He didn't even raise his voice. He simply looked at the boy, and then at his mother, with calm, steady eyes. His gaze was quiet but powerful, carrying the weight of someone who had faced far worse, yet remained unshaken. The tension in the cafeteria was palpable. The laughter of the boy and his mother died down under the gravity of Keanu's presence. Every student in the room could feel it. The energy had shifted. This was no longer a prank or a childish display. It was a moment of reckoning, a test of arrogance against composure, entitlement against integrity. Keanu's calm demeanor sent a clear, unspoken message. Disrespect may amuse you for a moment, but true authority doesn't need to raise its voice. It simply exists, quietly and firmly. The boy smirked, thinking he had won. The mother chuckled, thinking her son was clever. But everyone in the cafeteria, students, teachers, and staff, sensed that this was just a beginning. Something far bigger than spilled food was about to unfold, and it would leave everyone in the room stunned. The cafeteria was usually a place of casual chaos, students laughing, trays clattering, conversations overlapping, and teachers trying to maintain some semblance of order. Today, however, there was a subtle tension in the air. Whispers and curious glances circled the room, eyes tracking a young man whose presence radiated entitlement. The rich boy sauntered through the cafeteria like he owned it. His designer backpack swung carelessly over one shoulder, and every step was deliberate, loud, and confident. Students at nearby tables gave him wide berths, unsure whether to approach or stay out of his way. His mother, trailing behind, giggled at his antics, encouraging the behavior with approving nods and bursts of laughter. It wasn't just arrogance. It was entitlement amplified by wealth. He believed that rules were suggestions, and social norms existed only to entertain him. The casual cruelty of throwing food at someone else, especially someone as famous as Keanu Reeves, seemed to delight him, and his mother's laughter only fueled that sense of invincibility. Meanwhile, Keanu Reeves sat quietly at a table, a tray of simple food in front of him. He wore casual clothes, unassuming and relaxed, eating his meal with no apparent awareness of the brewing storm. He wasn't flaunting anything, wasn't demanding attention, wasn't reacting to the snickers and whispers around him. But the calm he exuded drew attention nonetheless. Students instinctively turned toward him, recognizing the contrast between the two figures, one loud, entitled, and reckless, the other calm, composed, and quietly authoritative. The rich boy scanned the cafeteria, looking for someone to provoke. His eyes locked on Keanu, and a mischievous grin spread across his face. This was his target. The idea of disrupting someone calm, someone famous, and someone who clearly wouldn't retaliate immediately thrilled him. He whispered something to his mother, who laughed again, pointing to Keanu as though to say, "Watch him squirm." Other students noticed, their whispers growing louder. "Is he really going to do it?" one asked. "I can't believe he's about to throw food at Keanu Reeves," another murmured. Teachers glanced up from their rounds, sensing tension, but unsure whether it would escalate or fizzle out. The rich boy's confidence was palpable. He thrived on attention, on the nervous energy of those around him. He strutted closer, his eyes on Keanu, calculating the perfect moment to strike. He had already decided that mockery was power, and he believed that the laughter of his mother was validation of that power. Keanu Reeves, however, remained unmoved. He didn't rise from his seat. He didn't tighten his grip on his utensils. He didn't even glance at the boy directly. Yet the calm that radiated from him was magnetic, commanding, and impossible to ignore. Students and teachers alike felt it, an energy that contrasted sharply with the chaos the rich boy tried to create. In that cafeteria, the stage was set. One boy armed with arrogance, privilege, and entitlement. One mother laughing, reinforcing her son's behavior. And one man, calm, composed, and unshakable, whose presence alone suggested that the events about to unfold would not follow the expected path. Everyone could sense it. This wasn't just a prank about spilled food. This was a confrontation between arrogance and integrity, entitlement and humility, mockery and quiet authority. And in the next moments, what seemed like a small act, a plate of food thrown, would turn into a lesson none in that cafeteria would ever forget. The rich boy's grin widened as he seized a plate from the cafeteria counter, sloshing mashed potatoes and gravy over the edges. Students froze mid-bite, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch in disbelief. He spun around, aimed carefully, and with a mischievous smirk, hurled the food across the room. Time seemed to stretch. The plate arced through the air, a splattering missile of lunch, before crashing near Keanu Reeves' tray. Mashed potatoes hit the floor with a wet smack. Gravy splattered across the tile, and a few stray fries landed teasingly close to Keanu's shoes. A collective gasp echoed through the cafeteria. Phones rose instinctively, capturing the chaos. Some students whispered nervously, "Did he just throw food at Keanu Reeves?" Others froze, unsure whether to laugh or intervene. The boy's mother laughed loudly, pointing at him with exaggerated pride. "Oh, isn't that hilarious?" she cackled, drawing attention to her son's antics. Nearby students chuckled nervously, unsure whether to join the laughter or recoil at the display of entitlement. But Keanu Reeves didn't flinch. He didn't shout. He didn't fling the food back or wipe his tray angrily. He remained seated, calm, and composed. His eyes met the boy's for a fleeting second, calm, steady, and unshakable. Then, almost imperceptibly, he turned his gaze to the mother, whose laughter now faltered under the weight of his quiet presence. The cafeteria fell into tense silence. The contrast was striking. One figure radiating arrogance, noise, and mockery. The other radiating calm, patience, and authority. Everyone could feel the energy shift. Students instinctively leaned closer, curious. Teachers exchanged uncertain glances. The room had transformed from casual chaos into a charged arena of confrontation. "Do you think this is funny?" Keanu asked softly, his voice low but firm. It wasn't a shout, yet it cut through the tension like a blade. The rich boy blinked, caught off guard. His mother froze, her laughter faltering for the first time. For all the arrogance and privilege she had wielded, she now sensed the weight of responsibility, the gravity of the moment. The boy tried to smirk again, thinking he could regain control of the situation. It's just a joke," he said, voice trembling slightly. But Keanu's calm didn't waver. His composure, his subtle authority, and the quiet power in his eyes made the boy feel something unfamiliar. Discomfort, uncertainty, and a dawning awareness that his actions had consequences. Students whispered nervously among themselves. Phones hovered midair, capturing the tension that could not be conveyed by any words. The laughter that had filled the room moments ago had evaporated entirely. Even the cafeteria staff, used to minor pranks, were now silent, recognizing that this was no ordinary incident. Keanu's presence alone shifted the dynamics. The boy's confidence faltered. His mother, who had laughed so freely, now glanced nervously around the room, realizing that this was not going to end in amusement. The energy had changed. Mockery had met authority, entitlement had met composure, and everyone in the cafeteria understood. A lesson was about to unfold. The rich boy's smirk faded further as Keanu slowly rose from his seat. Every eye followed him. He didn't shout. He didn't make a show of authority. and yet the room was completely under his control. The boy, for the first time, realized that arrogance and privilege could not shield him from accountability. The cafeteria held its breath. The laughter had died. The whispers had paused. And in that moment, the entire room understood a profound truth. Disrespect may entertain for a moment, but calm authority and integrity command attention and respect forever. The boy's next move, or perhaps the silence itself, would determine how this confrontation would end. The cafeteria had transformed from a noisy, chaotic lunchroom into a stage of tense anticipation. Every student, teacher, and staff member held their breath. The rich boy, once brimming with arrogance and entitlement, now stood frozen, the initial thrill of his prank fading under the weight of Keanu Reeves' calm authority. Keanu didn't shout. He didn't make a dramatic move. He simply stood, composed and centered, letting his presence speak louder than any words ever could. Students whispered nervously to each other, their voices trembling with disbelief. Did he just stay calm? I've never seen anyone react like that before. Some stared wide-eyed, as if witnessing a force that was invisible yet undeniable. The boy's mother, who had laughed moments ago, now stood stiffly, her amusement evaporating. The realization that her son had crossed a line, and that the man he mocked wasn't just a passive target, was beginning to settle in. Her laughter had been a shield, a way to normalize his behavior, but Keanu's quiet authority stripped it away. The room had shifted. Suddenly, she felt the weight of her own complicity, the embarrassment of encouraging such disrespect. Nearby students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Phones, still raised, were lowered as their owners recognized that the energy in the room had changed completely. This was no longer a joke. No one could ignore the lesson unfolding before them. Even the cafeteria staff, who had seen countless pranks, were silent, eyes fixed on the two figures at the center. The rich boy's grin had completely disappeared. He shifted from foot to foot, unsure what to do next. Confidence that had once radiated like a beacon was replaced by confusion and fear. The subtle shift in power, the quiet, commanding presence of Keanu Reeves, was now impossible to ignore. Keanu's eyes scanned the cafeteria, calm but penetrating. His gaze didn't need to be loud. It carried a natural authority. Students and staff felt it pressing down on them like gravity, a reminder that actions have consequences, and that arrogance and mockery cannot escape accountability. The boy's mother, realizing the gravity of the moment, tried to compose herself, but failed. The laughter that had seemed harmless moments ago now felt inappropriate, even foolish. Some students whispered to their friends, their voices hushed in awe. I've never seen someone stay that calm. He doesn't even look angry, and yet, he owns the room. The tension in the air was thick enough to be almost tangible. It wasn't fear exactly, but respect, awe, and the dawning realization that one wrong move, or in this case, one act of entitlement, could have consequences far beyond what anyone expected. The rich boy finally opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He realized, painfully, that his arrogance had blinded him. The prank that once seemed clever and harmless had now become a moment of deep embarrassment. His mother's eyes flickered nervously toward him, realizing too late that her laughter had amplified the disrespect, making them both the targets of Keanu's silent yet commanding lesson. Meanwhile, Keanu Reeves remained composed, silent, a calm center in a storm he had not provoked. Every movement, every pause, every glance carried authority. The cafeteria absorbed it all. Students leaned in slightly, unable to look away. Teachers exchanged knowing glances, silently acknowledging that they were witnessing a life lesson in respect, humility, and accountability. Finally, a hush fell over the cafeteria. Even the chatter and clatter of trays had ceased. The boys' parents, now fully aware of the weight of their complicity, glanced at each other nervously. Their laughter was gone, replaced by uncertainty. They realized that they, too, had a role to play in this lesson. Arrogance and mockery had been met with poise, patience, and quiet authority, and everyone in the room could see the stark contrast. Keanu's calm presence had not just subdued the boy, it had shifted the entire room's energy. What had started as a prank had become a powerful lesson, not through shouting or aggression, but through the sheer force of composure, patience, and integrity. The cafeteria, once noisy and chaotic, now felt like a classroom of unspoken wisdom. Everyone present, students, teachers, staff, and the boys' own parents, understood it. True authority and respect are earned through calm action, integrity, and humility, not wealth, entitlement, or mockery. The room waited, silent and tense, for the next moment, knowing that this confrontation was far from over, but that a lesson that could not be ignored had already begun to unfold. The cafeteria remained frozen in tension. The rich boy, his arrogance evaporated, stood with clenched fists at his sides, staring at Keanu Reeves. The laughter that had once echoed through the room was gone, replaced by a heavy silence. Every student, every teacher, every staff member knew they were witnessing more than a simple cafeteria prank. They were witnessing a lesson in humility and respect, delivered quietly but unmistakably. Keanu Reeves remained calm, composed, and unshaken. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make a dramatic gesture. He simply stood there, his presence commanding attention without demanding it. The boy's smirk was gone, replaced by nervous uncertainty. For the first time, he felt a weight of consequences that had seemed so distant moments before. His mother's laughter had completely vanished. She looked at her son, and then around the cafeteria, sensing the judgment, not just from Keanu, but from every witness to her son's behavior. The room's energy had shifted entirely. The mockery that had once seemed harmless now felt foolish, even shameful. Her face flushed as she realized the full scope of what had just happened. The boy's father, who had been seated quietly nearby, finally stepped forward, his expression a mix of embarrassment and concern. He glanced at his son, then at Keanu, and took a deep breath. We are truly sorry," he said, voice trembling slightly. "He shouldn't have done that. Please forgive us." The boy's mother nodded vigorously, eyes wide, guilt etched across her face. "Yes. He didn't understand. I didn't stop him. I'm so sorry." Keanu Reeves' calm gaze softened just slightly. He looked at the parents, then at the boy, and finally around the room. His voice was quiet but carried weight. Respect is not something earned through wealth, privilege, or laughter. It is earned through actions, consideration, and integrity. You may have forgotten that today, but there is still time to correct it. The parents' faces flushed deeper, understanding that this was more than an apology. It was a reckoning. The students, who had been watching with wide eyes, whispered among themselves. "Even their parents are scared. I've never seen anything like this." The teachers nodded subtly, impressed by the quiet power of Keanu's presence and the lesson unfolding in real time. The rich boy lowered his head, ashamed. His arrogance had been stripped away in a single, subtle moment. The authority Keanu projected was not loud or aggressive. It was composed, precise, and undeniable. The boy realized that mockery and entitlement could not shield him from accountability. Keanu took a measured step closer, but still maintained a calm distance. "This isn't just about today," he said softly. "It's about learning how to respect others, how to act responsibly, and how to carry yourself with integrity. Your actions have consequences, and humility is the first step toward growth." The parents nodded, their embarrassment turning into sincere reflection. The mother's voice trembled. We understand now. We've taught him poorly, and we're sorry for encouraging behavior that disrespects others." The students around the cafeteria watched in awe. Phones had been lowered, and the whispers were hushed. The room felt transformed, no longer a place of casual chaos, but a classroom of life lessons. Even the cafeteria staff, who had seen countless incidents, recognized that what they had just witnessed was rare. A quiet, authoritative demonstration of respect and accountability that transcended age, wealth, and status. The rich boy finally spoke, voice barely audible. I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves. I didn't understand. I won't do it again." Keanu nodded once, a subtle acknowledgement that the lesson had been received. He didn't lecture. He didn't scold. His calm presence alone had been enough to teach humility, accountability, and respect. The energy in the cafeteria began to shift again, but this time, it was lighter, reflective, and respectful. Students exchanged glances, whispering about the power of calm authority. Teachers smiled subtly, knowing they had just witnessed a moment that would stay with these kids for a lifetime. The cafeteria, once chaotic and full of laughter at someone else's expense, had transformed into a space of reflection, accountability, and understanding. The rich boy and his parents had learned their lesson in the most profound way possible, through quiet authority, presence, and integrity. And everyone in the room knew that this was a story they would tell again, about the day arrogance met calm mastery, and respect was restored. The rich boy sat quietly at his table, his head lowered, hands folded in front of him. The arrogance that had carried him through the cafeteria moments ago, the belief that he could mock anyone without consequence, had evaporated. His mother, sitting beside him, no longer laughed. Instead, she traced her fingers nervously along the edge of her tray, silently acknowledging the lesson that had just unfolded. Keanu Reeves had returned to his meal, calm, composed, and unshaken. He didn't gloat. He didn't lecture. He simply exuded the quiet authority of someone whose presence alone could command respect. Every student in the cafeteria felt it, every teacher observed it, and even the staff noticed it. This was not a spectacle. It was a demonstration of integrity, humility, and quiet mastery. The boy's father leaned closer, his voice low and reflective. "Son, do you understand what just happened?" The boy nodded slowly, still processing. I think so," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. I shouldn't have done that. I need to respect people, no matter who they are." The mother reached out, placing a hand gently on her son's shoulder. "We were wrong too," she admitted softly. "We encouraged behavior that was disrespectful. Today, we've learned that laughter at someone else's expense isn't funny. It's harmful. And entitlement doesn't excuse bad behavior." Students at nearby tables had resumed their meals, but the atmosphere had shifted. No longer was the cafeteria a place of casual noise and distraction. It was a classroom of life lessons. Whispers traveled quietly among the students, reflecting on what they had seen. Even the parents had to apologize. "That's crazy." He didn't even shout, and everyone listened. I never realized how powerful calm authority could be. The rich boy reflected inwardly. He realized that arrogance had blinded him to the consequences of his actions. He had thought that wealth, privilege, and social status could shield him from accountability. Today, he had learned the opposite. True respect cannot be bought, and true authority doesn't need to shout. It is earned through presence, composure, and integrity. Keanu stood, briefly acknowledging the cafeteria with a small nod, signaling that the lesson had been absorbed. The students, observing this subtle gesture, felt the gravity of the moment. They understood that respect is not a transaction. It is a demonstration of character, humility, and action. The boy's mother turned to him once more. "From today on, you treat everyone with dignity," she said firmly but kindly. "It doesn't matter who they are, celebrity, classmate, or stranger. Respect is non-negotiable." He nodded, taking in the weight of her words. The cafeteria, once a scene of chaos and mockery, had transformed into a space of reflection. Teachers and students alike recognized that a moment of arrogance had been replaced with understanding, humility, and accountability. Even the cafeteria staff felt the shift. Trays clattered softly as students returned to their meals, but the energy in the room was fundamentally different. There was a newfound respect, not just for Keanu, but for the lesson he had imparted silently, through presence and composure. The rich boy, his parents, and the students all carried the same understanding now. Arrogance may entertain for a moment, but integrity, humility, and calm authority leave a lasting impression. This was a lesson that would extend beyond the cafeteria, shaping interactions, decisions, and attitudes for years to come. Keanu Reeves finished his meal quietly, standing one final time, and left the cafeteria with the same calm authority he had brought in. The boy watched him go, absorbing the final piece of the lesson. True power lies in patience, composure, and respect, not wealth, entitlement, or mockery. And in that quiet moment, the rich boy, his parents, and everyone in the cafeteria knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, a demonstration of how humility, presence, and integrity can transform even the most arrogant hearts. The cafeteria had returned to its usual rhythm, trays clattering, students chatting quietly. But the energy was fundamentally different. What had once been a place of casual noise and minor pranks was now a space charged with reflection, awareness, and understanding. The rich boy, his parents, and every student and teacher present had experienced something rare, a lesson that would linger far beyond the lunch hour. Keanu Reeves hadn't shouted, hadn't lectured, hadn't demanded respect. Yet the room had been transformed. Arrogance had met calm authority. Entitlement had met integrity, and mockery had met humility. The impact was unmistakable. Students whispered among themselves, some still in awe, some silently replaying the moment in their minds. He didn't even yell, and everyone listened. I've never seen someone stay that calm and still command respect. Even the parents had to apologize. That's insane. The rich boy, sitting quietly, felt the weight of his actions. He had thought wealth and privilege could shield him from consequences. He had believed mockery and arrogance could entertain and amuse without repercussions. Now he understood the truth. True authority is not claimed, it is recognized, and respect cannot be bought or demanded. It must be earned. His parents, too, had absorbed the lesson. The mother's laughter, once so casual and dismissive, had been replaced by reflection and remorse. The father, silent for most of the incident, now understood that entitlement carries responsibility, and that teaching respect and humility is far more valuable than encouraging arrogance. They had come face to face with the consequences of their actions, and they had learned that influence and guidance must be rooted in integrity. Students who had been bystanders carried the lesson as well. Some approached the boy afterward, not to mock him, but with curiosity and empathy. Others reflected inwardly, considering how they themselves had treated peers or authority figures in the past. The cafeteria, once chaotic, had become a classroom of life lessons, where observation was as powerful as participation, and presence was as commanding as words. Keanu Reeves, meanwhile, had quietly finished his meal and left the cafeteria. No fanfare, no dramatic exit, just calm, composed authority that left a lasting impression. The students and teachers watched him go, understanding that power and respect are often silent, subtle, and far more effective than noise or theatrics. This story is why people watch these moments. Not for the drama alone, not for the spectacle or celebrity. They watch because these stories reveal fundamental truths about human behavior, respect, and accountability. They remind us that arrogance may entertain for a moment, but humility endures. Mockery can draw laughter, but integrity earns lasting respect. Wealth and privilege do not guarantee influence. Character does. True authority doesn't announce itself. It is observed, recognized, and internalized. Type respect if you believe humility is more powerful than wealth or arrogance. Comment below. What would you do if someone mocked or disrespected you? Ignore or confront, or teach a lesson the way Keanu did. Even the simplest act, a quiet gaze, a composed stance, a moment of presence, can change the course of behavior and leave a permanent impact. The rich boy had learned this firsthand. His parents had learned it firsthand, and the students who witnessed it would carry the lesson forward into their own lives, understanding that one calm presence can transform arrogance into humility, mockery into respect, and chaos into reflection. The cafeteria may have returned to normal sounds and movement, but the lesson remained. Arrogance may be loud, dramatic, and attention-grabbing, but quiet authority, integrity, and respect are enduring. And that is what makes moments like these unforgettable, shareable, and deeply impactful. Keanu Reeves didn't need to fight, shout, or demand respect. His presence, patience, and quiet integrity had done all the work. The rich boy, his parents, and every witness had absorbed the lesson. Respect is earned, humility is powerful, and character outweighs privilege every time. This is why people return to these stories, time and time again, because they remind us of what truly matters, how we treat others, how we respond to challenges, and how humility, integrity, and calm authority can change lives in ways that arrogance never could. And in the hearts of every student and teacher present that day, one truth was clear. Mockery and entitlement are fleeting, but respect and integrity last forever.